I'm Del Byler. I was born in Garden City, Kansas, March 5th, 1919, and I lived on several ranches in western Kansas while I was growing up. My mother died by age 6, and I remember at age 5 or 5.5 riding with my mother on a buckboard wagon from one ranch to another while Dad rode a horse alongside. And when I went to school, I rode a horse or walked, either way, about 3 miles to a one-room stone schoolhouse. It was a small schoolhouse with a coal shed in the back and a little wooden foyer in front where we take off our boots and jackets. And it had a big horse barn, which actually was bigger than the schoolhouse, and a couple of very small outhouses and a merry-go-round. It was in the middle of the plains of western Kansas. My nearest playmate was about 2.5 miles away, so I made friends with all the animals on the ranches and even the chickens to have something to do. And when it came time for high school, we didn't know anybody really in Cimarron, 22 miles away, or Dodge City or Garden City, about 40 miles away. So my aunt in Topeka, Kansas, took this little hayseed cowboy ranch boy in, and I stayed with her and my uncle in Topeka, Kansas during the school year time, all the way through high school. And there was quite an adjustment for me, going from 7 students to nearly 3,000 students, all at one jump. And during my senior year, I blossomed somewhat, and I edited the high school paper and made National Honor Society, so I was not quite so bashful at the end of my high school career. When it came time for college, I went to University of Kansas, and during which time there were severe dust storms in western Kansas. This was very hard on my dad, and I didn't want to take any more money from Dad for going to college, so I dropped out of college, I thought just temporarily, to earn some money. And I went to work in Chicago. That's where I was when the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor, and December 7th came along. And that was a life-changing event for me. On the morning after Pearl Harbor, December 8th, Army Air Corps was taking enlistments, and enlisted in the Army Air Corps. I was in great physical shape and had all the necessary requirements, except one disaster. I missed reading some of the color charts. You tell it a 9 or a 7 or whatever it is, and I was just slightly blue-green color blind, but I was great in other respects, so they actually swore me in. I was sworn into the Army Air Corps and sent home to await orders. And another disaster, instead of orders, I got a nice letter personally signed by the Secretary of the Air Force thanking me for my patriotism, but saying since I missed some of the color charts, the Surgeon General had reviewed my case, and they were canceling my enlistment and to report to my draft board. This I didn't want to do because I wanted to fly. And I took another job temporarily, and I heard that carrots were good for your eyes, and I thought I would practice just guessing where the numbers were and how to read the dots on them. So at the new job I had in Cincinnati, I allowed one day to go to Chicago to enlist in the Naval Aviation Program. And early in the morning I was there and went through the required exams and told them about my missing the color charts with the Air Corps. But I could read them by that time because I learned that if you squint your eyes and just kind of trace the numbers, you can really do pretty well with them. So I passed everything except another disaster. At that point I was 5 pounds underweight. And I just wanted to fly, and I wanted to pass several exams that day, so I went out on the street and I ate a lot of bananas. I had heard that they were heavy enough and to do it, and then ate other food I thought would be heavy, and went back and, roughly an hour or an hour and a quarter later, and took a big drink of water just before I got on the scales. I'd gained 5.5 pounds in a little over an hour. And I passed and was sworn in and sent home, and I did become a naval aviator. I had excellent training with the United States Navy, lots of it. For example, at Olathe, Kansas, I flew in October through January, which was the dead of winter, in the Yellow Perils, as we call them, the N2S planes with open cockpit. And we wore heavy felt face masks to prevent frostbite or freezing over our faces. But it was interesting flying open cockpits during the winter to Olathe. Then in August of 1944, at Corpus Christi, Texas, I became an officer and certified naval aviator with the wings. After that, I went to Melbourne, Florida, and flew F-6F Hellcat planes through operational. That was gunnery and all that sort of thing. And after that, we were asked, our class, the graduating class, was asked for volunteers to go into night fighters. We didn't want to go into night fighters. We thought we were pretty hot pilots, and besides that, we just wanted to go fight the war. And so hardly anybody, I think only one person volunteered. As a result of that, they needed night fighters, so they took the top 10% of the class and said, "You are now night fighters, period." And I was assigned to VFN 27, a night flying outfit at Vero Beach after Melbourne. And that was kind of interesting flying. We worked with ground control, and we did our intercepts over the ocean with bogies, and we'd either accelerate the bogey as we closed in on it against the lighter sky, if the sky was lighter, or if it was cloudy, we'd accelerate against the lighter ocean. And at times we actually flew as low as 50 feet over the ocean. And it was good flying. We were the first squadron to be allowed the radio altimeters, which were very accurate. We were encouraged to use them, to get used to them. So it sort of legalized flat heading over the Everglades and a little bit over Lake Worth. So we probably woke up a few people there. From there, I was ordered to VFN 55 at Quonset Point, Rhode Island, and Charleston, Rhode Island, and Martha's Vineyard for final training, Martha's Vineyard, Massachusetts. At Martha's Vineyard, Massachusetts, I received 5 days leave to get married. And Dick LeBar, my best man, and I flew to Grosse Ile, Michigan, which is a little island out in the river there, to get married. Shortly after that, incidentally, Dick LeBar was killed in landing aboard a carrier. So it's not the safest thing in the world. But anyway, I married my childhood sweetheart on June 9th, 1945, Jeannie Chestnut, and that was my second life-changing event. we had known each other and gone together for 5 years before we were married, and as a result, we were married for over 60 years and have 6 wonderful children, and I'm sorry that she's deceased now. When the Japanese finally formally surrendered, which is VJ Day, they had a happy event occurred. They turned the Enterprise around with escorts to shoot us through the Panama Canal up to New York City for Navy Day, October 1945. That was wonderful because the war was over, we were going home, and all the pilots, everybody was anxious to get there. It happened that the day before the fleet was to arrive in New York City for Navy Day, off Atlantic City, the captain of the ship asked for volunteers. Anybody would like to fly off the carrier and land a day early in New York City. And send me in, Coach, I'm ready. And I did arrive in New York City the day before the rest of the fleet. And as a result, I was able to really surprise my bride at the Grand Central Station. And she was meeting her dad, Manly Chestnut, who had arranged places for us to stay in New York. Anyway, Manly, her dad, met her at the beside the train, and I kind of hung back. And when she was throwing her arms around her dad, I came up and said, "Carry your bags, lady?" And she pretty much flipped at that point. So anyway, after we had a great time in New York, by the way. We were honored, and we were kind of given, in some sense, the keys to the city, and it was a great, great time. One of the things that was a pleasure, Jeannie and I were able to take her dad aboard the carrier Enterprise for a dinner in the wardroom, and that was one of the highlights of his life. I think he really enjoyed it. After that, November 1st, 1945, I was discharged from the Navy at Great Lakes, Illinois, and entered civilian life. Then in September 27th, 1952, I was recalled to active duty because the things were heating up in Korea, and I was assigned duty involving flying for the Korean War. I carrier qualified off the carrier Oriskany, who was operating off San Diego, and then I went to the Essex, which is my assigned carrier, my main carrier during the Korean War. That's Essex was CVA 9. We did the operational readiness inspection off the Essex by Honolulu, and we had some interesting episodes there. After flying in Korea, we came back to Moffett Field, and I had at that time 13 and a half years of satisfactory federal service, so I went another 7 years plus to NRF school, Navy Reserve Officer School, in order to be operational ready at any time. And then I was finally released from active duty as a lieutenant commander. I shouldn't say from active duty, I should say from reserve time, the NRS school, etc., with almost 21 years of satisfactory service as a lieutenant commander. And that's about the end of my military flying. After Korea and I was home, things were quite chaotic for me. I had no job. The Byler Sports Shop, which my uncle and I had started in Kenilworth, Illinois, had gone defunct during and maybe because of my recall for Korea. Had no job. I had 3 children, and I had to find some way to support the family. So I started selling maintenance supplies, and the first thing I did was selling maintenance chemicals. That was really quite frustrating and wasn't very profitable, but I did it. And then I wanted to do something professionally, so I took 2 tests, one for life insurance and one for real estate, to get my real estate license. I got both licenses the same month. Then I had to decide which one I would take. And I took the life insurance. And who knows whether it's the right decision or not, but I did. And things were tough to begin with. I was underpaid to start. Long toward the end, when I had my own company, I was grossly overpaid, but that was good. This was kind of bad. But Jeannie, all this time, Jeannie never worked. I didn't want her to work because we were raising our family, and the family was increasing. From 3 children, it increased to 6 children. Beautiful, wonderful family. A lot of it is because Jeannie stayed home She was wonderful to begin with, and she stayed home as a full-time mother, and that made a huge difference. We had one squadron reunion, a VF-23 reunion, which was in 1994. We had about 10 pilots here for that. It was right here at my home and also at Ridgemark where we live. And that was great. That was fun. Right after that, some of the people started dying off, like Poe Harwell, Peyton Oliver Harwell, our executive officer. He was the best pilot I have ever known. He was great. And he kind of was the glue that held the squadron together. And Poe died. We just never had any more reunions. One important lesson that sticks with me from my wartime experience is, it may sound a little trite to you, but I think it's extremely important. From like World War II, our entire nation was united. We all pulled together. We forgot politics for a little bit. We forgot all these little petty differences, and we all pulled together. Whether it's in married life or as a nation, it's important to have a common cause and stick with it. That's, I think, one of the most important things. Looking back, there are a couple of things of which I'm most proud. One is raising a wonderful, beautiful family of 6 without their mother having to work. And secondly, flying jets off of a carrier at night, because not many people would dare do that.